All right, welcome to our call on leading content design. Thank you very much, Rachel, for finding the time to join us, and congratulations on your book. Let me just hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. As Janice said, I'm Rachel. I am the head of UX content for Flow, which is a women's health app. So it helps women track their periods and reproductive health. And I've been there since maybe November now, building a team. Before that, I spent 18 months at BT, which is one of the biggest telecoms companies in the UK, running their content ops. And before that, I've worked in kind of various different organisations, from agencies to 300-year-old companies, and done a variety of roles, from running content teams, UX writing, content strategy. Before that, sort of maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I was in brand and marketing. And before that, at the start of my career, I spent some time in advertising agencies. So I've done quite a broad range of roles. But the thing I'm going to talk to you today about is content operations, and that's kind of the topic behind my book. So I'll take questions and things, but before that, I just thought I'd kind of do a bit of an intro. I've got a few slides to share on what content ops is and why it's important, and I guess like how I kind of got started in ops, because it was purely by accident, really. It was more, I didn't really know I was doing ops until I read a job description for an ops role, and then I thought, oh, I've been doing ops. I've been going into organisations and looking at how their content is set up and how I can help them work more efficiently or effectively and all that kind of thing. And then I took an ops role and had to kind of go in as an ops person, as an expert, and spent 18 months kind of figuring out what I was doing. And then I kind of wrote my book really to help anyone in a similar situation, but also just to help anybody working in content or even design or research or any other organisation get some like really useful techniques and tips for thinking more operationally. So hopefully you can see my slides. Let me know if you can't.
Yes, you can.
Great. Okay. So what is content ops? So it's a part of leadership, not just content leadership, but I am going to talk to you specifically about content, but it's a really key part of leadership, and we need to have the operational side of leadership to deliver our strategy, because we can have the best laid out plan of action, but in order to deliver it, we have to have the conditions around us that enable us to do that work and deliver it. So essentially, ops is making sure you have the right people, process, tools and systems in place to work effectively and efficiently, and helps your team scale with impact. Because if you scale with poor processes or workflows or tools in place, you're then having to kind of go back and fix all that after you've scaled. So if you get it right when your team's small, you can then grow much more impactfully. So the way I like to think about it is you've got these kind of 5 buckets of things, really. You've got the people side, which is things like hiring, onboarding, helping them collaborate better, helping them be happy and satisfied in their work. You've got capability, which is about making sure you've got the right people in the right places to do the work. So what skills do you have in the team? Where will those skills be best placed? If you've got skill gaps, how do you kind of coach or organise training? And then can people kind of have that like self development area of like facilitation, so that they can manage content creates or workshops or and initiate them with those teams? So giving people the skills to kind of do their job effectively. Then you've got processes, which is kind of ways of working, really, and giving people kind of frameworks and guidance to help them do their jobs better. You might be defining sort of common standards like style guides or governance around sort of tools, or you might be creating templates. So things like case study templates or test templates, or how all the things that they can use to kind of do these repeatable things consistently well over and over again. Then you've got your tools and systems you're using. So your design tools, are they suitable for what you need? Do you need to get new tools on board? Are there any kind of simple team tools or templates you can create? So like, do you have like a playbook or something like that where you can give people sort of templated things? Or do you have a design system? Do you need to sort of select how you're going to build your design system, like what platform you're going to build it on, what are you going to put in there, you know, all those kind of sort of systematic things that you need in place. And then alignment is much more about the managing outwards, I guess. So it's encouraging kind of cross-functional working, advocating for content or whatever discipline you're in, identifying where you can find efficiencies in your organisation, and demonstrating the impact of your work to the wider organisation. So these are the kind of buckets, and they kind of are the things that sit around actually doing the work. So if you think about content design or content strategy or UX writing, these are all the stuff that we have to do to get the work done. And if you can take that away from your teams and put it with a single person, or you can have a team that can focus on some of this stuff, the people who are doing the work can actually focus on that work and work much more effectively. I did a poll about a year ago on Twitter just to find out whether people in content, in companies with content, were actually really thinking about operations. And yeah, not many of them were. So most people said they either didn't have a content team, they barely thought about it at all, or they only thought about it a little bit. So there's lots of scope for improving the way we think about operations and the way we do content operations, wherever we are, whatever kind of organisation we're in. So what it isn't is, it's not the kind of strategic side, like defining the actual, you know, voice, tone, strategic direction, and it's not the kind of people management side of leadership, but it's all the other stuff. And I think it's good to think about how planning, how strategy is kind of your planning and implementation. So your plan of action to achieve the outcome and how you're going to implement that. And then running alongside strategy, you've got ops, which is the sort of enabling that to happen, and then optimizing how it happens. So if you've got a strategist and an ops person working together, it's kind of like really, really helpful, because you can think about, if you think about strategy, it's not as linear as this, but I like to kind of think about strategy as like, first you find your focus, then you think about the foundations you need, then you define who will do the work and how they'll do it, and then you measure what you're going to do, or define your measurements, and then once it's live, measure it, and then you think about how you'll kind of maintain that. So in this sort of process, you can see here how a strategist is thinking about, you know, what does the brand and the business need, what does the user need, and then the ops person might be kind of facilitating workshops or helping sort of find efficiencies with other departments, or you know, helping bring the right people together. And then when you start establishing, okay, what voice are we going to use, what frameworks do we need in place, what format do we need, your ops person might be kind of enabling that creation of those guidelines or frameworks. And when you move into actually identifying who will do the work, your ops person can be thinking about, how do you onboard those people? Have you got the right skills? Do they need training, coaching, that kind of thing? And then defining the process, so tools, tooling and systems, measurement, that's your kind of test frameworks, documenting your outcomes, documenting best practice. And then your maintenance is thinking about, how are you going to audit that content? How are you going to measure it? How are you going to measure sort of team engagement, and how are you going to look back at how your team is working and look at team health and see how you might optimize some of these processes. So I kind of think about them like as sort of two sides of a coin, really, the ops and the strategy, but you kind of need both to get your team to work effectively. So you don't need to necessarily have an ops team or an ops person, but your team can start thinking about how they can remove some of those barriers and think kind of more about the operations of their team and how they're working and how they're functioning. And one of the first really useful things to do to identify your pain points is to do some research. So when I first started at BT, I came into a team where there was 100 different content designers in a design team of around 300, and I didn't really know where to start because they were an established team, and I thought, well, in order to remove barriers, I need to know what those barriers are, and I need to know what are the things affecting the teamwork. So I wanted to kind of ask myself these questions. What should content designers be doing, and what were they actually doing? What was the desired outcome versus actual outcome? Where are the biggest pain points, and what was already being done about those things? What category did they fall into? What were people saying? Just kind of those verbatim comments to find out kind of the level of sort of engagement and happiness on the ground. So some really good tips for, if you need to kind of undertake this kind of work, think about how you can run interviews. Like, can you just have team meetings where you can ask questions? You can run workshops to just gather people's kind of biggest pain points. You can interview stakeholders. This is particularly useful to find out what are the stakeholders' perceptions of content design or UX writing or content strategy. Are there things that your stakeholders think the team should be doing that they're not, or do they have a strange perception of what content designers actually do? Maybe that's one of the big blockers to effectiveness in an organization. So stakeholder interviews are really, really super important. And you can do surveys, and you can do time tracking surveys. And a time tracking survey, again, super useful for understanding what are the biggest things taking up people's time that could be things that you could help with from an operational point of view. And in a time tracking survey, you get people to log over a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you get people to log the tasks and the hours they spend doing them. And you can get software that you can do this on. We used a tool called Harvest. And then I looked through at the end of those 2-3 weeks, I looked through at the tasks they were doing. And, there were some things that were taking them 3 times as long as they should, because they had issues with people not giving them the right information up front, for example. So they were spending lots and lots of time trying to track down that missing information to do their work properly. So there's things like that where you think, okay, we could solve this with a briefing template maybe. So understanding what those biggest time drains are is super important. You can do some process mapping, so you can get the teams together and get them to map out every step of their content creation process or sign-off process to understand where the blockers are. You can do tools assessments, so you can get them to kind of pull some requirements together about, what would the perfect content management system look like, and what have they got, what are they using now, where are the gaps, is it not suitable for what they need. And then you can do pre-mortems. So a pre-mortem is where you bring a team together and you say, okay, put yourself forward 6 months, everything's gone wrong, what's gone wrong? And they kind of list all the things that they think might go wrong. And then you say, why has it gone wrong? And this is a good way to surface concerns or anxieties or things that they feel need fixing that aren't being fixed. So again, that's quite a good way of kind of capturing some of these things. And then you need to summarize all these issues in a way that you can not only see where you need to focus, but actually share, because you're going to need to get stakeholder buy-in, or your team lead might need to help support you in kind of getting these things done. So I started to create a bit of an experience map, really. You don't have to go to this level of detail, but I found it quite useful to do so. And I went through from when someone joins a team or a squad, to understanding the product strategy, to doing the work, to sharing success, and to developing new skills. And I went through each of these phases and documented, what should someone be doing? What were they actually doing? What outcome was that resulting in? what were people saying, and then I looked at the pain points and then the opportunities, how we can improve that, which I'll kind of come on to about those opportunities. But the bit that was so important were the kind of quotes I could really pull out and demonstrate why that was a problem. So this person's joined a squad and they're not really clear on what their priorities were and why, and this had a really big knock-on impact on somebody's work, because they're being pulled in lots of different directions. They don't have any focus. They don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. So the result is that, you know, you've got people that are kind of a bit demotivated, a bit confused, a bit running around like headless chickens because they're not sure, you know, how to kind of focus their time and energy. And that's not what we want when someone joins a team. We want to give them a really clear understanding of what the business goals are, what the product objectives are, and what their focus is for the next quarter, and be part of that kind of process. So these kinds of like quotes were a really good way of kind of surfacing some of these issues. And then the best way to kind of identify your opportunities is together with your team, because if you just go away and come up with a whole bunch of solutions and then say, oh, I've got this great idea, I think everybody joining a team should go through this 2-week induction, people are going to say, I'm sure, I haven't got the time for that. So you kind of need to come up with these ideas together. You kind of need to get people involved in creating that. And one of the useful tools that I found to do this was to turn a lot of the problems, a lot of the pain points into how might we statements and ideate against them in the same way that we would do with, you know, product ideation. So these 3 statements, it takes ages for content designers to get Figma access. Content designers and product designers aren't sure how they should work together. Some product designers are not used to working with content designers. So if you flip those, you come up with these how might we statements, and then you can get the team together and come up with lots of ideas around how you could solve these problems. It kind of starts to get them into more of a problem-solving mindset. So an example here of how might we ensure all content designers have immediate Figma access. Straight away, the team were able to come up with 5 ideas that we could then take forwards and understand which of these could we do now, which of them might be a bit trickier. So you can then take all those potential solutions and understand as a team which would be sort of the lowest effort, highest impact. They're the things you might kind of do right now. Which ones might need a lot of extra help from other teams or time investment, so you can kind of think about, or do we do those later on? And then you can start to kind of develop a bit of a roadmap so that you can move things into, right, we can do this now, we can do this next, we can do this later. And you start to generate all these team initiatives that will help team ways of working and how your team operates. I think another really important thing is to make sure that your managers or your leadership team are behind what you're doing. And one of the ways to get them invested in what you're doing is to link it back to the company goals. So in many organizations, you'll have goals to improve efficiency or profitability. They're the kind of ones where you can be like, this is where ops can help. So let's say, for example, there's an overarching business objective to increase efficiency, and you've identified that you need to simplify workflows and improve tools, and you've come up with a couple of solutions. You can then start to put kind of success measures against those. So this one here, to simplify workflows, we want to implement a new workflow with fewer checkpoints. So instead of going through legal and compliance and localization and product separately, let's just do one checkpoint where we get them all in a workshop, and we can save like 3 days time if we do that. So a potential success measure there is you reduce your lead time. Another potential success measure is that you don't need as many people to do the editing because you've only got 1 round of edits versus 3. So you can start to kind of put some clear targets against these and do benchmarking. So you can say, well, it takes us 3 days now, but we think after this new process, it will take us a day. And that will save 2 days of someone's time. Maybe instead of spending 2 days' time editing, they can go and work on more important things and have a bigger business impact. So you can start to like kind of show how this ladders up to the company's success, and that's a really good way of kind of getting people behind what you're doing. And then, as I said before, you can kind of put this like little roadmap together that evolves as you go along. So, you know, there'll always be other priorities that come up, or there'll always be other projects that might be more important. So, but you can have a loose timeline that says, okay, right away, we're going to do this thing. We're going to improve access to Figma. Then we're going to look at the things that are things like improving collaboration. Alongside that, we'll do some training. And then further down the line, we might start thinking about our design system. So all of these like things that came out of your research, you can then work out the best sort of time frame in which to deliver them. And then, yeah, as simple as making time to get it done. This is, I know this is like super hard. Everybody's like busy. Everybody's like, you know, full time doing the work. If you don't have a person focused on getting the ops work done, it can be really hard to get your team behind this. What I try to do is give my team an objective each that's linked back to our team objectives. So we've got some operational things in our team objectives. So one is around improving workflows with our localization teams. One is around creating style guides and accessibility checklists. And then we've got another one which is around democratizing some of our UX writing by running training. So I try to make sure that everybody has an objective based around that, so that your team are kind of motivated to get some of those things done within the kind of scope of their day-to-day work. So that's kind of a very whistle-stop intro to content ops. As I mentioned, like my book has like loads more in it, tips. And I also run a community, a meetup called Tempo for anyone kind of leading content design teams or senior content designers, UX writers, anyone who's kind of in a leadership position or aspiring to be in a leadership position, or, you know, you might not be leading people, but you might be like a community leader. So if you have a look at leadwithtempo.com, you can find out more there. And that's actually a good forum for bouncing things off people. And, you know, on our Slack community, people are always asking about these sorts of things. How do you approach this thing? Or how do you approach that thing? Or how do you make time for these things in your team? So definitely recommend joining that if that's of interest. And
thank you very much, Rachel. We made it on time.
So yeah, I don't know if we've got time for like questions or. Yeah,
we do. I guess I could just start. You know, when we got to know each other, you were content design manager at BT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then before that, you were content ops manager.
Yep.
And now you're head of UX content. So what does these different titles mean? Like, I think I might have a few people on this call like, okay, so how is content design different from content ops or content strategy?
Yeah, so strategy is very much, I guess, setting the direction for your team and kind of planning out, you know, I guess strategy can be really broad. It can be like setting the content strategy for your organization. It can be setting the strategy for your team, and it can be setting the strategy for your products. So strategy can be at like many levels. Operations is much more these things about kind of getting the work done. How do you get the work done? How do you remove the blockers and barriers to get the work done? And then the content design or the UX writing is actually doing the work. So the day-to-day kind of creation of the UI copy or the journey copy. So yeah, I guess like in those three roles, I've had sort of a slightly different. Now I'm very much doing everything because I'm leading a team and I don't have an ops person, so it's a bit of everything.
Sure. All right. Any other questions? Rachel, if you don't mind, if you stop sharing your screen, I think we can see you also a little bit better. There you are. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, reflections, things you were expecting but you haven't heard? I can always do the popular evergreen of just picking somebody.
Stunned silence.
Yeah. I think they loved it.
This is Laura.
Laura.
I just want to say I really appreciate this content design, content ops, content strategy are all things that I've spent a lot of time yelling that please we should do this and it would help so many things, and it's good for it's good for productivity and efficiency, and it's good for customer experience. It's like there's no downsides. I don't understand why more organizations don't do it, but I'm really glad to see it getting some attention and focus.
I think maybe you need to give them a copy of my first book, which is Why You Need a Content Team and How to Build One.
Exactly.
Just leave it on their desk strategically,
Very good. So yeah, you just said it, which was going to be my comment. So this is actually your second book.
It is, yeah.
And I'll make sure to mention both of them in the blog post. Why don't we just, the limited time we have left, just hand it over to Grace and then Anke afterwards.
Awesome. I just wanted to say that it was really nice presentation, and I really like how you connected, the business goals to the craft of UX writing and content strategy. I think that is very often something designers overlook, to connect dots, and that helps a lot to get traction and buy-in from product and engineering and so on and so forth. That this kind of work is needed. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, and I picked up your book, and I'm looking forward to the summary, and very curious to get to dive into it. Thank you, Rachel.
Good.
Thank you.
Very good. Anke, did you have a hand or?
Yeah, I raised my hand. Thanks for the insights. I really appreciate it. One thing I would like to bring up is that, especially with regards to content design, usually the look from organizations when they talk about content design and create a team is the external point of view, like designing for customers and forgetting that you have the internal audience, which is somehow also your customer. And so, for example, internal communications does not always have a direct relation to the content team and can leverage the content design team, which I think is a deficiency here.
I completely agree. Yeah.
So in the limited time we have left, let's take Carsten. You'll get the last.
Hi there. Did I get this right? Are you writing a book on this, or have you already published one? That will be interesting to get the pointer, because I really appreciate you sharing the content.
So we'll finish on this. I'll leave it with you, Rachel, for the, what are the books you published?
So I've got this one, which is Leading Content Design.
Okay, cool.
And then I have another one, which is why you need a content team and how to build one.
All right, that's cool.
So this one's on Amazon.
This is going on everybody's reading lists. Obvious present ideas for upcoming weddings or anniversaries, things you're going to. Thank you very much, Rachel, for finding the time. Much appreciated.
Thank you all.
That's all we had.
Bye.